Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. The forgotten frequency. The first thing I noticed when I arrived at Blackrock radio station was the silence. Not the peaceful kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket, but the oppressive type that weighs on your chest and makes you strain to hear something, anything, to break it. "It's just temporary," my new boss, Richard, had said over the phone. "6 months at most. The company needs someone to maintain the equipment while we decide what to do with the place." I needed the job. After losing my position at the city radio station during budget cuts, my options were limited. 6 months of isolation at a decommissioned radio tower in the mountains seemed like a small price to pay for a steady income and the promise of a recommendation afterward. The station sat perched atop Blackrock Mountain, accessible only by a winding dirt road that seemed to actively resist my car's progress. The building itself was a 2-story concrete structure, weathered by decades of harsh mountain conditions. A lone transmission tower stretched skyward beside it, its red warning lights dark and lifeless. Richard met me outside, his ancient pickup truck the only other vehicle in sight. He was older than I expected, probably in his 60s, with deep creases around his eyes that suggested years of squinting at equipment dials. "Martin," he said, extending a calloused hand, "glad you made it." "Storm's coming in tonight." I shook his hand and glanced at the clear blue sky. "Doesn't look like it. Weather changes fast up here, you'll learn." He grabbed my duffel bag from the back of my car and nodded toward the building. "Let's get you settled." Inside, the station was a time capsule. Equipment from at least 3 different decades filled the main broadcasting room, from ancient reel-to-reel machines to more modern digital mixers. A thick layer of dust covered everything except a small desk in the corner, which held a laptop and what looked like maintenance logs. "Your job's simple," Richard said, dropping my bag on the floor. "Check the equipment daily, run the generators once a week, and make sure nothing breaks down. Company wants everything operational even though we're not broadcasting." "Why keep it running if it's decommissioned?" I asked. Richard shrugged. "Above my pay grade. Maybe they're planning to sell it. Maybe they're just covering their asses for the FCC. Either way, you get paid to push buttons and write reports." He gave me a quick tour of the facility. First floor. Broadcasting room, small kitchen, bathroom, storage. Second floor, 2 bedrooms, another bathroom, and a small lounge area with a TV that probably hadn't been updated since the 90s. "Power goes out sometimes during storms," Richard continued. "Generators kick in automatically, but sometimes they need help. Instructions are in the maintenance room." He paused at the door to the second bedroom. "Don't use this room." "Why not?" "Leak in the ceiling. Company doesn't want to fix it until they decide what to do with the place. Your room's across the hall." I nodded, though something in his tone made me uneasy. The door to the forbidden room had 3 deadbolts installed on the outside. "One more thing," Richard said as he prepared to leave. "Don't broadcast anything." I thought that was the whole point. The station's decommissioned. Equipment still works. Transmitter still works, just don't use it. His face hardened. "Under no circumstances are you to transmit on any frequency." "Clear, crystal," I replied, though his intensity seemed excessive for such an obvious instruction. After Richard left, I spent the afternoon unpacking and familiarizing myself with the station. The place was well stocked with non-perishable food, and there was even decent internet via satellite, a luxury I hadn't expected. The maintenance logs were meticulously detailed, with entries dating back decades. The most recent entry was from 3 weeks ago, simply stating all systems nominal. That night, as Richard predicted, a storm rolled in. The wind howled around the building, finding every crack and crevice to whistle through. Rain lashed against the windows with such force I worried they might crack. I was in the kitchen making dinner when the lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. I waited for the generators to kick in, counting silently in the darkness. 10 seconds passed, 20, nothing. Grabbing my phone for light, I made my way to the maintenance room. The generator instructions were taped to the wall, yellowed with age but still legible. The process seemed straightforward enough. Check the fuel, prime the engine, pull the starter cord. After a few attempts, the generator roared to life, and lights flickered back on throughout the station. As I turned to leave, something caught my eye. A small red light was blinking on one of the radio consoles in the broadcasting room. I approached it cautiously. According to the equipment logs, all systems should have been in standby mode. The console was one of the older models, probably from the 80s. The blinking light indicated that it was receiving a signal on frequency 91.7 FM. I checked the logs again. The station had broadcast on 89.5 FM before being decommissioned. 91.7 wasn't even assigned to this region. Curiosity got the better of me. I put on the headphones connected to the console and turned up the volume. Static, just endless static. I was about to take off the headphones when I heard something beneath the white noise. a voice so faint I could barely make it out. "Help, please, anyone." I adjusted the tuner, trying to get a clearer signal. The voice faded in and out like a distant radio station during a long drive. "Trapped, don't know how long, please respond." The voice was male, I thought, though distorted by static. It repeated the same phrases over and over like a looped recording, yet something about it felt immediate, desperate. "Hello," I said, pressing the talk button before remembering Richard's warning. I quickly released it, but it was too late. I'd transmitted. The static cleared instantly. The voice came through with perfect clarity. "Oh, thank God, someone's there. Please help me, I've been trapped for so long." A chill ran down my spine. "Who is this? How are you broadcasting on this frequency?" "My name is Daniel Weiss. I was the night technician here. I've been trapped. I don't know how long it's been." "Trapped where?" "This is Martin. I'm at Blackrock Station." There was a long pause. "You're at the station right now?" "Yes, I just started. I'm the new caretaker." Another pause, longer this time. "Martin, listen to me carefully. You need to leave right now. Take your car and go down the mountain. Don't wait until morning." Thunder crashed outside, so loud it made me jump. "There's a storm. The road will be mud by now." "It doesn't matter. You're in danger. We're all in danger. It's in the walls." "What's in the walls?" Static overtook the channel again, drowning out any response. I adjusted the dials, trying to find the signal again, but it was gone. The red light stopped blinking. The console went dark. I sat there for several minutes, headphones still on, listening to nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself it had been a prank, maybe some local kids with a powerful transmitter messing with the new guy. Or perhaps it was Richard, testing whether I'd follow his instructions about not broadcasting. Still, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me. I checked all the doors and windows before going to bed, making sure everything was locked. The storm continued through the night, and I slept fitfully, waking at every crack of thunder and gust of wind. Morning brought clear skies and a sense of embarrassment over my midnight paranoia. In daylight, the radio station seemed less ominous, just outdated and neglected. I went through the maintenance checklist methodically, shutting down the generator now that power had been restored, and testing each piece of equipment as specified in the logs. When I reached the console that had received the strange transmission, I found it completely dead. Not just powered down, but unresponsive even when I tried to turn it on. I made a note in the log and moved on. The day passed uneventfully. I explored the surrounding area, finding a small hiking trail that offered spectacular views of the valley below. The isolation didn't bother me as much as I'd expected. After years of working in a busy city station with demanding producers and temperamental hosts, the silence was refreshing. That night I was awakened by a sound I couldn't immediately identify. A scratching, scraping noise coming from somewhere inside the building. Half asleep, I assumed it was branches against a window, or perhaps small animals in the walls. But as I became more alert, I realized it was too rhythmic, too deliberate. It was coming from the second bedroom, the one Richard had told me not to use. I got out of bed and stood in the hallway, listening. The scratching continued, accompanied now by what sounded like whispers. I couldn't make out words, just the cadence of speech. "Hello," I called out. "Is someone there?" The sound stopped immediately. Complete silence fell over the station. I approached the forbidden room, heart pounding. The 3 deadbolts gleamed in the dim light from my phone. I hesitated, then slowly, one by one, slid them open. The door wasn't locked from the inside. It swung open easily when I turned the handle. The room was empty, no furniture, no equipment, nothing that could have made the sounds I heard. The ceiling showed no signs of the leak Richard had mentioned. The only unusual feature was a large stain in the center of the floor, a dark discoloration that spread outward in a rough circle about 4 feet in diameter. I knelt down to examine it. The wood was warped slightly, as if exposed to moisture for a long time, but it was completely dry to the touch. In the center of the stain was a small hole, no wider than a pencil. As I leaned closer, a blast of cold air hit my face, air flowing upward from the hole, carrying with it a smell like wet earth and something metallic. I recoiled, suddenly certain I didn't want to know what was below that floor. I backed out of the room, closed the door, and slid all 3 deadbolts back into place. Back in my bedroom, I didn't sleep for the remainder of the night. The next morning, I called Richard. "What's under the station?" I asked without preamble when he answered. A long pause. "What do you mean?" "The second bedroom, the one you told me not to use. What's under it?" Another pause. "Nothing's under it, just the foundation." "Why?" I told him about the scratching sounds, the hole in the floor, the cold air. "You opened that room." His voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. "I told you not to use it." "I didn't use it. I just looked inside." "Close it up and leave it alone, Martin. That room has water damage. Floor's not safe." "There's no water damage, Richard. And why are there 3 deadbolts on the outside of the door?" "Listen to me," he said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "Some things are better left alone. Do your job, check the equipment, and stay out of that room. 6 months will go by before you know it." He hung up before I could respond. I spent the day going through the station's records, looking for information about Daniel Weiss, the man from the radio transmission. There was no mention of him in any of the employee files I could find, though the records were incomplete, with large gaps in the timeline. That night I stayed up late, monitoring the console that had received the transmission. I'd managed to get it working again after replacing a blown fuse. Hours passed with nothing but static across all frequencies. Around 3 a.m., as I was about to give up and go to bed, the red light began blinking again. Same frequency, 91.7 FM. I put on the headphones. This time there was no static. The voice came through clearly from the start. "Martin, are you there?" I hesitated before pressing the talk button. "I'm here, Daniel." "Yes, listen, we don't have much time. It knows you're there now." "It heard you. What are you talking about? Who heard me?" "Not who, what." His voice was tight with fear. "Did you go into the room, the one that's locked?" "Yes, there's nothing in there. Just a stain on the floor with a hole in the middle." "Oh God," he sounded on the verge of tears. "You opened the door, you gave it a way out." "Gave what a way out?" "Daniel, you're not making any sense." "The frequency, Martin." 91.7, it's not a normal broadcast frequency, it's a containment frequency. Containment, for what? We never knew what to call it. Some thought it was a ghost, others said demon. I think it's something older than either of those words. It came through the original equipment when the station was first built in 1952. Started as a voice on the radio, just like I am to you now. But it found a way to manifest physically. I glanced nervously at the ceiling, the walls, suddenly aware of how quiet the station was. "That's impossible. We found a way to contain it." A continuous broadcast on 91.7 FM created a kind of barrier. As long as the signal was maintained, it couldn't fully materialize. But when the company decided to decommission the station, they shut down the broadcast. I finished for him. Yes, and it got out. It took the night crew first, then the engineers who came to investigate when the station went off air. Eventually it got me too. Got you. What does that mean? We're part of it now, trapped. Not dead, not alive, just here in the walls, in the frequencies. It's like being underwater, but the water is everywhere, even in your lungs, and you can't drown. A chill ran through me. "If you're trapped, how are you talking to me?" "I found a way to reach out through the equipment, but it's not easy and it doesn't last long." "Martin, you need to restart the broadcast on 91.7. It's the only way to contain it again." "How do I do that?" "There's a transmitter in the basement. The real basement, not the maintenance room they show to employees. Behind the shelves in the storage room, there's a door. The transmitter is down there. It needs to be reactivated manually, and that will contain this thing. It will weaken it, enough for you to escape at least." The console suddenly emitted a high-pitched whine that made me rip off the headphones. When I cautiously put them back on, Daniel was gone. Only static remained. I sat there for a long time trying to process what I'd heard. It was crazy, impossible, yet the fear in Daniel's voice had been real. And there were the sounds from the locked room, the cold air from beneath the floor, the 3 deadbolts that seemed designed to keep something in rather than out. I decided to look for the basement door he'd mentioned. The storage room was cluttered with decades of accumulated equipment, spare parts, and boxes of records. The shelving unit on the far wall looked permanent, bolted to the floor and ceiling, but when I pushed against it, I felt a slight give. Bracing my shoulder against it, I pushed harder. With a groan of protesting metal, the entire unit swung inward, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. I shined my phone light down the stairs but couldn't see the bottom. The air that rose from below was cold and damp, with that same metallic smell I'd noticed from the hole in the bedroom floor. Every instinct told me to close the hidden door and forget I'd found it. But if Daniel was telling the truth, whatever was in this station had already noticed me. Running might not be an option anymore. I descended the stairs slowly, one hand on the wall for balance. The staircase went down much farther than seemed possible, given the station's position on the mountainside. I counted 60 steps before reaching the bottom. The basement was a single large room with a dirt floor. In the center stood a massive piece of equipment that looked older than anything upstairs, a transmitter from the early days of radio, all vacuum tubes and heavy transformers. Its design was strange, with symbols etched into its metal casing that didn't look like any electrical notations I recognized. Attached to the transmitter was a microphone on a stand, its metal surface tarnished with age. A thick cable ran from the transmitter up through the ceiling, presumably connecting to the broadcast tower outside. As I approached the transmitter, I noticed it was humming faintly, as if still drawing power despite being shut down. The control panel had a single dial marked with frequencies and a large power switch currently in the off position. I reached for the switch, then hesitated. What if this was exactly what the entity wanted? What if Daniel wasn't trying to help me but luring me into a trap, A sound from above made the decision for me, the unmistakable scrape of the deadbolts on the second bedroom door sliding open. Something was coming out. I flipped the switch to ON and turned the frequency dial to 91.7 FM. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the transmitter surged to life, the vacuum tubes glowing bright blue. A high-pitched tone emanated from it, just at the threshold of human hearing, making my teeth ache and my vision blur. From upstairs came a scream, not human, but not animal either. It was a sound of pure rage and pain, like metal tearing and glass shattering and flesh burning all at once. The entire building shook with the force of it. I backed away from the transmitter as dust and small pieces of dirt fell from the ceiling. The screaming continued, accompanied now by a pounding that seemed to come from all directions at once. The thing was looking for me. The microphone on the stand suddenly crackled to life. Martin, Daniel's voice, urgent and strained. "It's working, but it's not enough. The containment field is too weak after being down so long. You need to strengthen it." "How?" I shouted over the cacophony from above. "The microphone. You need to speak the containment words into it. They're etched on the base of the transmitter." I crouched down, shining my light on the base of the machine. There was an inscription there, words in a language I didn't recognize. "I can't read this. You don't need to understand it. Just speak it, quickly." The pounding was getting closer. I could hear something moving in the storage room at the top of the stairs. I began to recite the strange words, stumbling over the unfamiliar syllables. As I spoke, the transmitter's hum grew louder, and the blue glow from the tubes intensified until it filled the basement with harsh light. The screaming from above changed pitch, becoming more desperate. The building shook more violently, and I had to grab the transmitter to keep from falling. "Keep going," Daniel urged. "It's working." I continued the recitation, my voice growing stronger as I became more familiar with the words. They felt wrong in my mouth, as if they weren't meant to be spoken by human tongues, but I pressed on. As I spoke the final phrase, the transmitter surged with power. The blue light became blinding, and a wave of force emanated from it, knocking me to the ground. The screaming above cut off abruptly, replaced by a silence so complete it felt like pressure against my eardrums. "Daniel," I called out, "is it contained?" No response came from the microphone. The transmitter continued to hum, the frequency dial locked at 91.7 FM, but Daniel's voice was gone. I waited in the basement for what felt like hours, afraid to go back upstairs. Eventually, exhaustion overcame fear, and I made my way up the narrow staircase. The storage room was as I'd left it, and the rest of the station seemed undisturbed. The door to the second bedroom was closed, all 3 deadbolts securely in place. I didn't remember closing it. Over the next few days, I maintained a careful routine. I checked the equipment as required, making sure the transmitter in the basement remained operational. I kept the door to the second bedroom locked. I monitored the radio frequencies, but heard nothing but normal broadcasts from distant stations. A week after the incident, Richard arrived for a monthly inspection. He seemed surprised to find me still there. "Most don't last this long," he said as he checked the maintenance logs. "Because of what's in the walls?" I asked directly. He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. "You found the basement?" "Yes." "And you reactivated the containment field?" "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Then you know why we keep this place running. Why we need someone here at all times, to make sure it stays contained." "Exactly." He closed the log book. "The company has known about it since the beginning. They built this station specifically to contain it after it came through during an experimental broadcast in '52. For decades, we maintained the field without incident, then budget cuts happened. And they decided to decommission the station," I said. "Not exactly. They decided to automate it, minimal staff, remote monitoring. They thought the containment field could be maintained electronically." He shook his head. "They were wrong. What happened to the night crew, to Daniel Weiss?" Richard's expression darkened. "Daniel was the first to realize something was wrong when the automated systems failed. He tried to reach the basement, to restart the transmitter manually. He didn't make it. None of them did, but I've spoken to him. Through the radio, what you spoke to wasn't Daniel, not anymore." Richard looked at me with pity. "It got inside him like it gets inside everyone it takes. It uses them, their memories, their voices. It's how it lures new prey." A cold realization washed over me. It wanted me to activate the transmitter. "No, it wanted you to speak those words." Richard's voice was grim. "Those weren't containment words, Martin. They were release words, a ritual of manifestation. But the screaming, the building shaking, it was being born, taking physical form, and you gave it a voice." He looked around the station. "It's quiet now because it's no longer here. It's out there in the world. We have to warn someone," I said, reaching for my phone. Richard put his hand on my arm. "Who would believe us? And even if they did, what could they do against something like this?" "No, our job now is to prepare." "Prepare for what?" "For when it comes back." He gestured to the radio equipment. "It's connected to this place, to the frequency. It will return eventually, seeking more power, more vessels. And when it does, we need to be ready. I asked, suddenly understanding why Richard had seemed so relieved to find a replacement caretaker. Yes, Martin, we. He handed me a new maintenance log, this one filled with instructions I'd never seen before, rituals disguised as technical procedures, wards described as equipment tests. Welcome to the real job. Hope you didn't have plans for the next few decades. Outside, the transmission tower stood against the clear blue sky, its red warning lights now glowing steadily. Broadcasting on a frequency no one was meant to hear, waiting for something to answer from the darkness between stations. I sometimes wonder if anyone else can hear it, that subtle interference on their car radios as they drive through the mountains. That whisper beneath the static that sounds almost like a voice saying their name. That impulse to turn the dial to a station that shouldn't exist. If you're driving at night and your radio suddenly picks up a signal on 91.7 FM, don't listen. Change the station immediately, because I know now what Daniel knew. Some frequencies were never meant to be broadcast, some voices were never meant to be heard, and some of us are just vessels, waiting to be filled with something ancient and hungry that speaks through the walls, through the wires, through the very air itself. It's out there now, listening, waiting, and sometimes, late at night when I'm alone in the station, I swear I can hear it breathing.